All right, so today we're going to dive into some really interesting stuff. We've got a whole bunch of information here about vitamin K. I mean, we're talking PubMed studies and, practical health tips and even like some buzz from GQ and Vogue. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it really does seem to be having a moment.
Yeah, so what we really want to figure out is like what's the deal with this vitamin, especially this MK7 form, and how could it impact, things like your bones, your heart, and maybe even some other areas.
Yeah. You've brought a great collection of sources here, and I think there are definitely some core insights we can unpack about Cairo. Cutting through all the hype and just getting to what the science actually says.
Okay, cool. So first off, vitamin K. It's not just one thing, right? I see K-Ro and K. So like, what's the difference? What do we really need to understand about that?
Right, so there are a couple of main forms of vitamin K. You've got vitamin K or phylloquinone, which you mostly find in leafy green vegetables. That one's mainly involved in blood clotting. But the one that we're really interested in today is vitamin K, manaquinone. That one hangs out in fermented foods, some animal products, and, it really is the star of the show here.
Okay, so got it. Kale salad's good and all, but if we're talking about these bigger benefits, we got to look at the MK7 and like, not right. That's kind of where the magic happens.
Exactly.
Awesome. So one of the big areas we see is bone health. Like, how does K actually work there?
So this is where it gets fascinating and, particularly relevant for anyone thinking about their long-term bone strength. K-Euro activates a protein called osteocalcin. You can kind of think of osteocalcin as the protein that grabs calcium and helps stick it into your bones, which then makes them denser and stronger. So by activating this calcium grabber, K-Euro plays a really crucial role in bone mineralization.
Oh, wow. So it's like making sure the calcium actually goes where it needs to go.
Exactly. It's all about directing traffic.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I saw you pulled out a study that looks specifically at this. What did it find?
Yeah, there was this really interesting study with postmenopausal women who took 180 micrograms of MK7 daily, and they did this for 3 years. And the results showed that there was a real improvement in their bone mineral density and, their overall bone strength, which suggests that MK7 can really be helpful in reducing bone loss as we age.
So that's huge, especially for anyone worried about keeping their bones healthy as they get older.
Right. It's definitely promising.
All right, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the cardiovascular system. So how does K-Euro keep our hearts healthy? What's the story there?
Okay, so connecting this to the bigger picture, K-Euro also activates another protein. This one's called matrix GLA protein, or MGP.
MGP, got it.
And MGP's job, which is super important for your heart, is to actually inhibit calcium from building up in your arteries. That's what we call arterial calcification.
Right. So basically it's like, I guess, a traffic cop for calcium, making sure it gets to your bones but doesn't clog up your arteries.
Precisely. You got it. And the research that you pulled backs this up. Higher dietary intake of K-Euros has been linked to, lower levels of calcium buildup in the coronary arteries and a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease overall. And that same study with those postmenopausal women, they also found that MK7 helped reduce arterial stiffness, which is another big factor for heart health.
Wow. Okay, so potentially good news for both our bones and our hearts with K.
It seems that way.
Awesome. Now, you also dug up some early research on K and cancer. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting, but it's super important to note that this research is still, pretty early.
Okay, so preliminary stuff.
Yeah, in vitro studies, so basically studying cells in test tubes, have shown that K can induce apoptosis, which is basically like programmed cell death in leukemia cells, colon cancer cells, and lung cancer cells.
Yep.
And the way it seems to work is through pathways in the cell's mitochondria, their little powerhouses, and it involves the production of certain reactive molecules.
So it's showing some promise in the lab, but it's not like a proven cancer treatment or anything at this point.
Not at all. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. These are early findings, and we really need much more research, particularly human clinical trials, to see if these effects actually hold true in, the complex environment of a living human body.
Absolutely. Super important to remember that. Okay, so if someone's thinking about getting more K, is supplementation safe?
So in general, vitamin K supplementation seems to be safe, even at, fairly high doses in research settings. But, and this is a big but,
Yeah.
anyone who is thinking about taking supplements, especially if they're on blood thinners or have any existing health conditions, really needs to talk to their doctor first. There can be some interactions that are really important to consider.
Right. Always good advice. Talk to your doctor before starting anything new.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to recap, it looks like vitamin K, especially MK7, is pretty important in helping our bodies use calcium the right way. That means strong bones and a healthy heart. And then there's that early cancer research, which is definitely interesting, but, it's early days.
That's a great summary of what we've looked at today. It's really all about understanding the current science and how these micronutrients actually work in the body.
Yeah, that's what we're all about here. And on that note, here's a final thought for you all listening out there. Given how much our understanding of even like basic nutrients like vitamin K is always changing, what other assumptions that you have about your own diet and your own health might be worth taking a second look at? Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Absolutely. It's a journey of discovery.